Friends, I again welcome you to our discussion on the concept of supply. Previous session, we are trying to understand the definition of recipient. Let us start from that point. Going to share the screen with you right now. So few other definitions we have already discussed earlier. Now, this is the point which we are discussing, how to know that who is the recipient in the context of a supply. So you see this definition, section 2, clause 93 talks about recipient. You see, in fact, it has been divided into three parts. First situation is that where there is a consideration payable. Consideration is payable means consideration payable in the context of a supply. It might be paid by anybody, it might be paid by third person. Prior to this, we have already understood the definition of or the meaning of consideration. And that point of time, we know consideration did not flow from the recipient. Okay, consideration may come from third parties. That also we have discussed. Yes or no? I think we'll definitely agree. Once again, I'll show you that definition which we are learning. You see, here we have seen it says whether by the recipient or by any other person. Okay, so payment may be made by the recipient or may be made by any other person. So consideration may flow from third parties. Okay, if that is so, if the question is that whether consideration is payable or not, so we have to think whether consideration is payable by the recipient, or if not recipient, whether consideration is payable by any other party. That's also consideration. The moment we know that consideration is payable in this supply, then the person who is liable to pay is the recipient. Okay, right? Suppose I am going to purchase something and consideration is payable. Then I am going to pay. Then naturally I am the recipient. But on the other hand, if no consideration is payable for goods, this particular clause is only for goods, not for supply. Right? Suppose someone is giving something free of cost. In that case, consideration is not payable. Then we have to interpret that who is the recipient, to whom the goods are delivered, or to whom the goods are made available, or to whom goods are given possession, or person to whom goods are given for use. He is the person who is the recipient. And as you can see, the part B talks about only for goods. Part A was talking about goods, services. So consideration is not payable. The recipient is the person who is receiving the goods. And when no consideration is payable in supply of services, suppose I am going to a doctor and the doctor is giving me free consultation, it's a service. Then the person to whom the service is rendered, he is the recipient. Okay, this is how recipient has been explained in this definition. And if you read it further, it says recipient also includes the agent of the recipient. That means goods may be delivered or service may be delivered to the agent of the recipient. In that case also, the meaning of the recipient can be construed with reference to the principle. So if you read this part, any reference to a person to whom supply is made shall be construed as a reference to the recipient of the supply and shall include his agent. That means supply may be made to the recipient himself or it may be made to the agent. Okay, so this is the meaning of recipient. It's just one of the key definitions relevant for supply. And what is the meaning of supply? In relation to any goods, services or both, it shall be the person supplying the goods and services or both, and shall include an agent. Agent can also be considered as the supplier. Okay, so principal can be supplier and agent can also be the supplier. So these are the some basic things we have understood. This was in fact the, you can say, prerequisite to understand the meaning of supply. Now, friends, now we are in the position to understand the concept of supply. And for that thing, we have to read to section 7 of the CGST. CGST Act already you have seen. So, not only section 7, the other related sections like section 8 and some other schedules also we need to learn. Okay. And you can say supply the keystone of GST architecture. And these are the sections which are relevant for us. As you can see, Section 7 will be explaining us about the meaning and scope of supply. Section 8 will be talking about the taxability of the composite supply and mixed supply. In the previous section, I was showing you that how these two concepts are there in the CGST Act. We'll be seeing the meaning of that. What is the meaning of composite supply? What is the meaning of mixed supply? And there are few schedules relevant to it. The Schedule 1 talks about activities to be treated as supply, even if it is made without consideration. So friends, now you already know consideration plays a key role in taking a decision whether it is supplier or not. But there is a schedule which contains a list of activities which can be treated as supply, even if it is without consideration. Now, if you refer to Schedule 2, it talks about activities and transactions to be treated as supply of goods or as supply of services. That means this Schedule 2 will be talking about some of the activities which can be treated as supply of goods, and some of the activities will be treated as supply of services. So that is discussed in Schedule 2. Understood? Now, Schedule 3 talks about activities and transactions which shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. Okay, so these are the three schedules. You need to remember this as a structure. So meaning is Section 7. Composite and mixed supply concepts are discussed in Section 8. Schedule 1 talks about supply without consideration. Schedule 2 talks about situations which can be treated as supply of goods and which can be treated as supply of services. And Schedule 3 talks about supplies which are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. With this background, or having understood the structure of this concept, now one by one we'll see the relevant provisions. First, let us enter into first relevant section, that is Section 7. Section 7, subsection 1, and various clauses will be seen. First, you see, if you read it, first have an idea that, can you tell me whether it is an inclusive definition, an exclusive definition, or an exhaustive definition? You see, supply has been defined here. Just look at this section, tell me, is it an exhaustive definition or it is an inclusive definition? What kind of definition it is? Can anyone tell me? Just as looking at this slide. You can unmute and speak. As you can see, the wordings are supply includes, meaning this is an inclusive definition. So it includes all forms of supply of goods and services, are both such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal made or agreed to made for a consideration. Therefore, we are learning the definition of consideration. Because all these activities may be a sale, it may be transfer, it may be barter, it may be exchange, it may be license, but consideration is important. And it has to be made by a person in the course or furtherance of business. So it should be in the course of business, or it should be in the furtherance of business. So in connection with the business, this sale, transfer, barter, exchange should have been made for a consideration. That is important. So these are the key aspects. It includes so many things, but consideration is important, and nexus with business is also important. Clause B talks about importation of services for consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. That means if it is import of services, not goods. Okay, it is very clear. It is importation of services, and it is for consideration. And it may be or may not be for your business. Still, it can be regarded as supply. So, importation of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business, can be regarded as supply of services. Okay, here consideration matters, but connection with the business may not be required. Okay, it is made clear that whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. First part you see in the course of furtherance of business was necessary. Other in absence of that, it cannot be considered as supply. But second case, if it is connected to it is related to importation of services, right? And it's for a consideration, then it may be in the course of business or may not be in the course of business. Now, point C talks about activities specified in the Schedule 1 made or agreed to be made without consideration. So here is a list of activities which can be made or maybe agreed to be made without consideration, but still they will be regarded as supply. So first what we'll do, let me show you that Schedule 1 so that you can have an idea that what are those activities which can be regarded as supply, even if without consideration, even if they're undertaken without consideration. Now have a look at here. This is, you see, this is in fact Schedule 1, and this talks about activities to be treated as supply even if without consideration. First you see permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where input tax credit has been availed on such assets. Okay, so that means this shows that there might be a business asset which you have purchased and you have availed input tax credit on it, and you are selling that asset and disposing of that asset. So in that situation, if that asset is permanently transferred or disposed of, even if there is no consideration, but since you have availed input tax credit, it will be still regarded as some. Is it clear? You may feel free to ask in case you have any doubt. Point 2. Second point talks about supply of goods and services are both between a related person or between distinct person. Okay, now you might be thinking related persons you have discussed in earlier, various definitions of related persons you have discussed. Now, what is a distinct person? That might be coming to your mind. Who is a distinct person? Okay, now you can have a look at your screen. You can find out the concept of distinct person is discussed in section 2, clause section 25(2), but you have to read it along with section 25(5). What happens in case a person is having multiple business verticals? For example, someone is doing, let us say, textile business, textile trading, and someone is also doing something like it is selling some electrical items. So two are different verticals of the business. So there is a possibility that one can take two GST registration numbers in the same state. Okay, one is textile business, other part is your selling electronic equipment. Two units can have two different businesses. Okay, if that is so, in respect to each other, they will be considered a distinct entity and distinct person, even if business belong to one person. So our second point here talks about supply of goods and services both between related persons or between distinct persons, as specified in section 45. When made in the course of furtherance of business. So if there is some transaction, some supply of goods and services, or some transfer of goods and services without any consideration, but the parties involved are distinct person or related person, still they will be these things will be considered as supply, even if consideration is not. There is one more point here you have to remember. Gifts not exceeding 50,000 rupees in value in a financial year by employer and employee shall not be treated as supply. Okay, employer is giving a gift to the employee, but not exceeding 50,000 rupees. Okay, that will be still be regarded as supply, even if there is no consideration. Suppose an employer is giving, let us say, a car to employee as a gift. Is it a supply? Answer will be yes, because the value, if the value is exceeding 50,000 rupees, then it is yes. Okay, then it shall be treated as supply. Okay, so even if consideration is not there, this situation it will be treated as supply. Next part is the supply of goods by principal to his agent where agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal. So when the principal is supplying goods to his agent, that is also supply, even if no consideration is involved. And reverse also, by an agent to his principal, when the agent is supplying goods or services to his principal, where agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of the principal. So agent is receiving on behalf of the principal and is supplying back to the principal. In that situation also, even if consideration is not involved, it is still regarded as. Then point 4, or the last in the list, is the import of services by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishments outside India. So it must come from a related person or from an establishment outside India, his own establishment outside India. It might be from a branch, might be some other office outside India. And if it is in the course of furtherance of business, then even if there is no consideration, that will be still regarded as supply. Okay, these are the, you see, broadly 4 examples we have seen, 4 instances we have seen, where even if consideration is not there, consideration is not involved, still the transactions can be regarded as supply. Hope it is clear. So from the beginning, I told you that if you look at the supply definition, you can find out supply includes all these things. Import of services for a consideration, even if it is not in the course or furtherance of business. Then activities which are specified in Schedule 1, even if that is for without consideration. And this is Schedule 1. I think you got a broad idea that what is the meaning of supply. If you want, you can once again have a look at this. Did you understand, or you have any query? If you have any query, you may raise your hand or ask me. Now, these are the activities where even if consideration is not involved, still these are to be regarded as supply. Now, some of the statutory provisions will be learning.
So,
Ask a query.
so in this previous slide, yeah. So just next one. So can you just move to it? So that yellow box, can you just show it about the distinct person?
Yeah, this is the meaning of distinct person. Is it visible to you clearly?
Yes, sir. Here, like, if a person is having like different business, still while paying the tax, he have to pay like even though they are distinct, they have to pay together, right? The tax and all, like the what, like even though the one person is having 2 different business, still also like while paying the GST or the taxes and all, that person have to pay in an aggregate. Like the limitation should be in like sum of both the business, right?
Yeah, I
Or
got your question. I think your question is that, you see, let us understand that. So it'll be, the thing is that tax has to be paid by the taxable person. There can be one taxable person, there may be multiple taxable persons. Okay, if you are having 2 registration numbers, that's open to you. Suppose you are having 2 business verticals, either may include it all these things in your one registration. Say that these are the my business, business A, business B, business C, business D. These are the 20 businesses are doing. So in that case, what will be having? You'll be having one GST registration. Is it done? Right? There you can see these are all the activities you are supposed to do. And you are registered for, and you can do all these things with one GST registration number, and the entire business GST you can pay together. Is it clear to you? But if you are having multiple business vertical, then it is also optional to you. You can take multiple GST registrations. Okay, for your garment business, you can take one GST registration. For your electrical equipment business, you can take one more GST registration. And if you have taken two different business registrations, they are two different distinct persons. Okay, and these registration numbers are different. And in this case, tax has to be paid differently, not the aggregate.
But like in case of like that while paying the PAN number of that one particular person will be only like in both of the cases like that one particular person's PAN number will be there. Then how like it won't be like combined together even though there are two different business but one person is like handling it like the one person is the only owner no then how
Uh,
different.
One person is definitely one, but they are two different businesses. Try to understand that GST registration number is linked to PAN, but PAN and GST numbers are not same. GST registration number are PAN based. Okay, for one PAN, you can have two GST registration numbers within the state if you're having two different business verticals. Okay, you will be treated as distinct person. So in that situation, what will happen? Two businesses are different. Okay, even if their owners might be the same. Okay, their authorized persons who are authorized to file the return, they might be same, but they are two different businesses. And that is why the concept of distinct business comes into existence. Okay, many people have the same thing. Are you getting?
So
Okay.
means yeah.
Okay, here one thing also, it may be relevant for you. You see, you are right that you are pointing it out that PAN is one. Very good. PAN is one. You see, it's also possible under income tax law also. Suppose you are having one PAN, you can have two TANs also, multiple TAN also. That possibility is also there. Okay. They are also linked with PAN. So if you are, let us say, for example, let us say, you see, different branches of the bank have different TAN. Suppose State Bank of India, one branch, and State Bank of India, another branch, they will have different TANs. Okay, but all of them are linked to one PAN. Similarly, when multiple TANs are possible with one PAN, within that income tax department, sort of GST law also, same thing. PAN is one, but GST might be different. Are you getting me? Is it clear to you?
Yes, sir. So, but one doubt, like I was having that, like while paying the tax, the normal tax, like above, like just take an example, like X is like a business person, who is doing like what so goods and services, like giving goods and services.
Right.
Uh, so what is the limitation of like that amount?
Oh,
Uh,
you are talking about the registration limitation, all these
yes,
things.
so that is
But you see,
this.
okay, so we have not yet launched it. I think that may be one of the reasons for which you are getting confused. Soon after this concept, the basic things of supply, I will try to cover that part also, registration project. Okay, the registration limits are there, 40 lakh, 20 lakh in different situations, different limits are there. Here, aggregate has to be taken, aggregate value of supply. We'll be learning that, right? At that
In
stage.
this case and that are different.
Sorry.
This were in case of like supply whatever we're reading, and in that case, like, is this a different? Like here we say like we can like a person can have different business with distinct like what the registration. It won't
With the distinct GST, one can have with different GST, and one can have different business verticals. Okay, and if he's having different GST registrations, different GST INs, he has to pay GST separately. But if having only one GST IN, where all these businesses are included, then he has to pay only one payment, aggregating all the businesses GSTs. Okay, and this is the option to the person.
so if a person is doing like two different like different business and he is taking like is there any advantage like if he is be having that different registration number like or both are similar to each other?
Then advantages are there. That's why people are opting for this. Many cases, many people do. Many times we also professionals do it. Sometimes why we do it? Because maybe I'm having a different branch. There is a different partner. Okay, we want let him handle his GST, let me handle my GST. In that case, what happens? We'll say, let us have two different GST numbers. Otherwise, every time I have to consolidate, I have to collect the data and file one GST return. If I want to do it independently, I can say, okay, you can take one GST registration. No issue. That's possible. So that is the advantage. Otherwise, money-wise, same amount has to be paid. Okay, is it clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, good that you raised that question. The practically this issue comes, and this is also one decision area. Sometimes you decide whether it is advisable to go for one GST return or go for multiple GST returns. There are some advantages are there. Okay, like this, independently that can be handled, right? So GST can be monitored more accurately, that if someone is very sincere, he can pay GST sincerely. If someone is not sincere, let him suffer. Why others will suffer because of one person? So these issues come up. So therefore, law allows you to take separate GST registrations. In that case, there will be, even if person is same, that can be considered as a distinct person. They can be considered as distinct person. Okay. Let's move down. Okay, now you can do one thing to understand the concept of distinct person. You may please refer to section 25.2 and section 25.5 of CGST Act, which I had shown you today in the previous session, that how we can read that act. Now, friends, few other statutory provisions we need to learn. This is about subsection 1A, where it says, where certain activities or transactions constitute a supply in accordance with the provisions of subsection 1. Subsection 1 we have just covered. They shall be treated either as supply of goods or supply of services, as referred to in Schedule 2. So I was showing you, I was explaining this thing, that Schedule 2 talks about activities of transaction which are to be treated as supply of goods or as supply of services. So those things that they are in Schedule 2 will be referring to that. Now you see, as you can see, this is Schedule 2. It clarifies that what are the activities or what are the transactions which shall be regarded as supply of goods and which shall be regarded as supply of services. First, you see, Schedule 2, first point talks about the transfer of something. It may be goods or services. It says, any transfer of title in goods is a supply of goods. Okay, so goods you already know, it's a movable item. So if transfer of title of the goods is transferred by whatever means, even if goods are not physically transferred. Okay, so if transfer in title of goods, it will be treated as supply of goods. That means it is not supply of services. Suppose you see you are transferring your TV to somebody else, right? And you are acknowledging, or you are okay, you're transferring the title, you're transferring the owners by a piece of paper, transferring the ownership. It will be treated as supply of goods. The next point talks about transfer of right in goods or undivided share in goods without transfer of title. Here we are talking about title is not transferred, ownership is not transferred, but right is transferred. Right is transferred means you can use this thing. This right is given. Okay. So if right to use or undivided share in goods, so you have a share in this goods, you cannot, it's not the ownership, you can use it. Okay, some people are also having share in that particular goods. If that undivided share or right in goods is transferred, then it is not transfer of goods, it's not supply of goods, it is supply of service. Okay, meaning title is transferred, it is goods transfer. but rights are transferred or undivided share is transferred, it is supply of services, not supply of goods. Then any transfer in the title of goods under an agreement which stipulates that property in goods shall pass at a future rate upon payment of full consideration as agreed. If that is the situation, that means title of the goods are going to be transferred through an agreement, and agreement says the property in the goods, that means the ownership and all other properties, the goods shall pass not today, at a future date, upon payment of full consideration. Full consideration paid, title of the goods will be, or because the properties and goods will be passed. Okay, but here again, since as you can see, title of the goods is involved, although it is in the future date, it will be treated as supply of goods or not supply of services. Okay, you see the first part one, which talks about transport. So we have covered three things where title is involved, title is transferred. Maybe right now, maybe at a future date, maybe upon receipt of full consideration, that will be treated as supply of goods. But where title in goods is not transferred, what is transferred is the right in goods, or right, or you can say it is an undivided share in goods, then this is a supply of services, not supply of goods. Second point is relating to land and building. Any lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy a land is a supply of services. Lease agreement and their supply of services. Any lease or letting out of any building, including commercial, industrial, residential complex for business or commerce, either wholly or partly, is a supply of services. Okay, here title is not transferred, only through agreement. It may be a leasehold agreement, it may be tenancy agreement, it may be an easement agreement, it may be a license agreement through which maybe certain rights in the property is transferred. All these are the supply of services. Now, third point talks about treatment about certain processes. Any treatment or process which is applied to another person's of the goods. Suppose I'm handing over my goods to someone. I'm giving my car to someone to get it painted for painting. So I'm sending it for a treatment or for a process. This process, somebody else is applying on my goods. Goods are mine. Title is with me. And this application of this process or this treatment will be regarded as supply of services. Is it clear to you what is supply of services? What is supply of goods? Okay, in case of transfer, you know what is important is the title inputs. Land and building for the lease agreement, tenancy agreement, letting out, all these there, supply of services. Treatment of process is always supply of services. Hope these things are clear. This is the schedule 2, which is connected with subject. Now, schedule 2 continues. Few more other points are also there. We have to go through it, though it is quite theoretical, but still it is relevant to interpret the law. Fourth point, transfer of business asset. Where goods forming a part of business are transferred or disposed of under the direction of a person carrying out the business, so as no longer to form a part of this asset, whether or not for a consideration. Such transfer disposal is supply of goods by a person. Okay, you see, some assets of the business are transferred or disposed of. It may be freely, whether for consideration or that doesn't matter. That's why it says whether or not for a consideration. Such transfer of or disposal is a supply of goods by that person. It is not supply of services. Okay, it's supply of goods, even if consideration is not. Okay. Next point is that whereby or under the direction of a person carrying in the business, goods held or used for the purpose of business are put to any private use or are used or made available to any person for use for any purpose other than the purpose of business, whether or not for constitution. The uses or making available of such goods is a supply of services. Okay, here point is that when the business goods were goods were held for business, were put to for some private use, whether it is for consideration or not. When goods are put to that kind of use, that use will be referred to as supply of services, not supply of goods. So these points are important. You please mark in which situation it will be treated as supply of goods and which situation it will be treated as supply of services. Even if you know that under GST law includes both the things, or the charging section includes both the things, supply of goods as well as services. That point might be coming to your mind. Then why should we distinguish? Why we are trying to distinguish between supply of goods and supply of services? There are many reasons for that. Sometimes what happens, certain activities are exempted, certain activities you can say, yeah, certain concessions are given to those activities if they're services. That is not given if it is supply of goods. So we need to draw a conclusion that whether it is a supply of goods or whether it is a supply of service. Okay, so if you want to, in that situation, in case we want to address that issue, whether it is really supply of goods or supply of services, maybe we want to avail some exemption, maybe some other reason, then we have to refer to this schedule 2, and that is what we are doing right now. Now again, you see, when a person ceases to be a taxable person, that means suppose someone is having a business, he has a taxable business, taxable person, and business is closed. When the business is closed for whatever reason, he ceases to be a taxable person. So any goods forming a part of the assets of the business, then whatever asset he was having, that shall be deemed to be supplied by him in the course of furtherance of the business immediately before he ceases to be a taxable person. So if he is ceasing to be a taxable person today, immediately before that, it will be assumed or it will be deemed that he has supplied all the assets. Okay, but there are some exceptions. Exception is that unless the business is transferred as a going concern to another person. So one person takes that business as a going concern, then assets are still continuing. It has not been supplied. Or the business is carried on by a personal representative who is deemed to be a taxable person. Okay, suppose one proprietor of the farm dies, then his personal representative may carry on the business as deemed to be the taxable person. If that is the situation, it will not be assumed or it will not be deemed that all the business assets are supplied on the date before he ceases to be the taxable person. It will not be assumed like this. That means assets are continuing in the business, and the other person, who is the personal representative, who is the deemed to be the taxable person, he is continuing with the business. So in case of transfer of business assets, these points you have to keep in mind. Okay, these are the theoretical things, but these provisions you have to just go through. You should know where these provisions are available. Now, one more point. This is again another activity which is treated to be a supply, and it is to be treated as supply of services. One first point is the renting of immobile property. Renting of immobile property is a supply of services, not supply of goods. Construction of a complex building, civil structure, or a part thereof, including a complex or building intended for sale to a buyer, wholly or partly, except where the entire constitution has been received after issuance of the completion certificate, where required, the competent authority, or after its first occupation, whichever is earlier. So normally you see construction contract, construction of a complex building, civil structure, okay, which are intended to be sold to the buyer. will be constructed and subsequently it will be sold. That will be treated as supply of services. Okay, not supply of goods. But there are some exceptions, except where the entire consideration has been received after issuance of the completion certificate. That means what has happened? Certificate, entire project has been completed, or the entire house has been completed, entire construction activity has been completed, and the competent authority has given a certificate. And after that, the entire consideration is received. Then it is a sale. But the construction activity is a supply. So this is how we can distinguish which situation it will be treated as supply, which situation it will be treated as supply of goods, and where it will be treated as supply of services. So therefore, this schedule 2 is important. Friends, what we have studied so far, let me quickly recapitulate those things. We understood that supply includes so many things. It also includes import of services, even if not connected with the business. But we know there are certain activities which are there in Schedule 1, where even if consideration is not there, still that will be regarded as supply. And after that, we move to Schedule 2. There we have understood that in certain activities are there where law says, or this particular schedule says, that it will be always treated as supply of goods. And some situations are there where it will be always treated as supply of services. For example, whenever there is a transfer of goods and the title of goods is transferred, it will be always treated as transfer of goods. But when it is relating to use of the goods, or right in the goods, or undivided share in the goods is transferred, then it is supply of services. So this leasing contract, tenancy contract, easement contract, license contract, all these are the supply of services. Okay. Application of any treatment or process is always a supply of services. Okay. When the business assets are transferred, whether there is a consideration or not doesn't matter. It is always supply of goods. Right. But when the business assets are used privately, put to any private use, then whether consideration is involved or not, that doesn't matter. It is supply of services. And if the business ceases, then it will be assumed that all the assets are supplied, and it will be treated as supply of goods. Okay. But there are exceptions. Exception is that when the business is transferred as a going concern, another person is continuing their business, or it is carried out by the personal representative who is deemed to be the taxable person. That is an exception. Then we know that the renting of immobile property is the supply of services. Construction of complex building, civil structure, etc. are the supply of services. This is what we have understood so far. Okay. Now, one more. We have to add one more complexity. That notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1. Friends, we have whatever we have learned so far, we are learning now subsection 1. You see, you have seen this is the subsection 1 which talks about the supply. Now, subsection 2 talks about notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, the activities or transactions specified in Schedule 3, or any activities or transactions undertaken by central government, state government, or any local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities as notified by the government on recommendation of the council, shall be neither treated as supply of goods nor as supply of services. So Schedule 3 talks about certain activities which are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Which are the activities? Activities which are specified in Schedule 3. So let us see what are these activities. Or activities which are undertaken by central government, state government, and local authority. They are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. If you look at Schedule 3, you can find out these are the list of activities which are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Number 1, supply by an employee to employer in the course of relation to his employment. Suppose somebody is employed in an organization and he is providing some services and he is doing some job. So that will, don't expect that he will be raising a GST invoice, because that is not supply. It's neither supply of goods nor supply of services. That means rendering services by employee to employer is not is supply. Then services of any court or tribunal established under law for the time being includes services which are provided by the tribunal or court are not supplies. Functions performed by members of parliament, members of state legislature, members of panchayat, members of municipalities, members of local authorities. So all these elected members, the service they perform, that is out of GST, that will not be regarded as, that is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Then duties performed by a person who holds any post in pursuance of his provisions of the constitution in that capacity. Someone is, let us say, holding a constitutional post, and in that capacity he is providing some services. Then that is also not supply of services nor supply of goods. Then duties performed by a person as a chairperson or a member or a director in the body established by central government, state government, and local authority. So these services which are performed by chairperson or member or director of central government, state government, or local authorities. So that is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Then services of funeral, burial, crematorium, or mortuary, including transportation of the deceased. All these activities are not supply of goods nor supply of services. Therefore, they are not coming under GST code. Sale of land, okay, is not subject to the certain we have seen subject to Schedule 2, sale of buildings. Schedule 2, these points we are discussing. Okay, regarding the construction activities, so that we have discussed. But normal sale of land will not be covered under. That is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Actionable claims other than lottery, betting, gambling, they are also neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Okay, so these are the items which are contained in Schedule 3, which shows that certain situations might be there or certain activities may be there which are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Okay, if you look at the subsection 3, it talks about subject to subsection 1, 1 and 2, the government may, on recommendation of the council, specify by notification of the transaction which are to be treated as supply of goods and not supply of services, or supply of services and not supply of goods. So government can say this is supply of goods, this is not supply of services. Or government can also say this is supply of services, not supply of goods. Okay. Friends, although it was little technical, but still understanding was necessary. Okay. You may manage without remembering it, but you need to know, you need to read at least once so that you can have the idea that this is how supply is defined. It may appear to be complex. Now we have studied the text part of it. Now real analysis will be doing. Right. So let me start the first analysis. Next session will be trying to go in detail. First, if you analyze the concept of supply, you have seen that the definition is inclusive. First of all, you already said it is an inclusive definition. That means do not think that the things which are listed there are only supply. It's not like that. There might be many activities which are not included in the list, but still they are going to be regarded as supply because the definition itself is an inclusive definition. If you read the definition, you see these wordings are there, such as. Okay, you see once again, you see the definition of supply. If you analyze this, okay, you see, can you see it here? It says supply includes, meaning it is inclusive definition. And it says all forms of supply and goods and services are both such as. Such as means this is example. So there might be many other modes or methods through which goods can be supplied. So such as sale, transfer, barter. So since the word such as is there, so this means these are only examples. So this is, again, we should analyze that part. Now you see. And supply of goods and services, both supply of goods, services are both. All of them we are going to attract GST. And you know, money and securities, they do not attract GST. Why they do not attract GST? Because they do not come under the definition of goods. We have already seen the definition of goods. We have seen goods definition excludes monies and securities. Therefore, they do not attract GST. And it is also very important to learn that the consideration is important. Supplies should be made for a consideration, but exceptions are there. You have seen a list one where you have seen that you can say schedule 1, where certain transactions are there, where even if there is no consideration, still those activities are to be regarded as supply. Exceptions are there, but normally consideration is important. Supply should be made in the course or furtherance of business. Here also exceptions are there, but you know, normally supply has to be made in connection with the, so in course or furtherance of business is a relevant thing. And supply should be made by taxable person who is registered under GST, who is liable to be registered under GST. He is a taxable person. So that is also important. And supply should be taxable supply. There might be certain supplies which are outside purview of GST. So in order to ensure for levy of GST, one has to see that these are actually taxable supply. So now this is the summary of what we have learned today. Okay, if you see here this picture, supplies, it should be supply of goods or services for a consideration in the course of furtherance of business. It has to be made by a taxable person and it should be a taxable supply. These are the concepts. Okay, and in that concept, exceptions are there. Certain transactions are deemed to be supply even without consideration. Import of services for consideration, even if not in the course of furtherance of business, are also supply. Certain transactions are kept out of supply, even if parameters exist. You have seen that they'll be treated neither as supply nor supply of goods nor supply of services. Certain activities are either treated as goods or treated as supply. Certain transactions can be notified to be treated as supply of goods, not services. And vice versa also. Certain transactions can be notified as supply of services, not goods. So we have to keep all these things in mind. Okay, so this is again, still we are at the background. We're still trying to understand the basics of supply. We'll be doing further analysis in our next session. Okay, hope it is clear up to this. Do you have any query? Okay, no query hopefully. Thanks a lot. We'll catch up with the next session. Thank you very much.